Welcome to the former home of Superior Pecans at 317 North Orange Avenue in Eufaula, Alabama. My name is Deanna Cochran and I'll be your tour guide. The building we're standing in was originally built in the 1800s as a blacksmith shop. Later it became Britt's Machine Shop, and in 1939 Mr. Sparks transferred his business Superior Pecans from across town in Eufaula to this building. If you'll notice on the floor there are dark spots. These are oil spills from its days as a machine shop. Mr. Sparks bought pecans from local growers and then shipped them to various places in the United States to be sold. Before he purchased the pecans, however, they had to be inspected. Mr. Sparks had the farmers pour their pecans into the inspection table. If you'll notice in the center portion there's a grate. This grate allowed dirt, sticks, and debris to fall through. It also allowed Mr. Sparks to visually inspect the pecans. The pecans were then deemed to be top quality, and there was a bag hung on the two hooks here. And then the trapdoor was lifted and the pecans fell into the bag. The bag was then moved to the next part of the process. After the pecans had been inspected, they were brought inside to be weighed. Mr. Sparks paid the farmers according to the weight of the pecans. If it was a particularly large order of pecans, they were weighed at the set of intake scales here. You'll notice that the scale is actually set into the floor and the weights are here on the back of the scale. If it was a smaller order of pecans, they were weighed at the portable scales like these. After the pecans had been weighed and the farmers were paid, the pecans were poured into the hopper of the grading machine. The pecans then traveled by conveyor into the grater itself. On the sides of the grater are numbers. These numbers represent the sizes of pecans in their shells. 10s, 12s, 14s, on the front 16s, and on the far side were 11s, 13s, and 15s. The 16s were the largest and the 10s were the smallest. Pecans fell through each chute depending on what size they were in their shell. A bag was hung on the wooden arms here, and then the trapdoor would be lifted until the bag was full of pecans. When the bag filled, the trapdoor was closed and the bag was sewn up. Originally, this was the only thing that Mr. Sparks did. He took these bags of pecans and he shipped them up north to be sold. Later, Mr. Sparks decided that there was money to be made in the pecan business, and he invested in processing equipment of his own. After the pecans had been sorted by the grater, Mr. Sparks would collect the 15s and 16s. These pecans were moved by the dollies to the back for further processing. Before the pecans could be processed, they had to be cleaned. Initially, Mr. Sparks would lower the pecans in a basket into a vat filled with a Clorox water solution. This killed any germs on the shells of the pecans and allowed the pecans to be cleaned. However, if you've ever dealt with cooking pecans, then you know that pecans are very absorbent for tastes and smells. So the Clorox water solution turned out not to be the best option. Therefore, Mr. Sparks invested in the steamer. The steamer held pecans in steam for 2 to 4 minutes, killing any bacteria or fungus and cleaning the shells. After the pecans had been held in steam, they were taken by a monorail into the cracking room. Ready? This is the cracking room at basement level. Along the back side, you'll see that the wall has been renovated, and in the corner you can see the door to the steaming room. Along these metal bases sat mechanisms that were crackers. The cracker's job was to crack the shell of the pecan. Along the back walls was about an 18-inch wide plank, and it was one person's job to walk the plank all day and turn the baskets of pecans over into the crackers to keep them cracking. After the shells of the pecans had been cracked, they were lifted back up to the first floor level of the building by a dumbwaiter. Pecans were then poured into the hopper of the shelling machine, and the sheller's job was to separate the pecan meat from the shells. Both meat and shells fell through these chutes onto the conveyor belt. 2 people had a job to stand here all day and collect the pecan meat. On either side of them stood 2 metal cans. The meat was put into these cans, and the shells continued on the conveyor and went through this chute underneath the building. The employee that worked here the longest, who we lovingly call Granny, served Superior Pecans for over 40 years, until 2014. She would often report that Mr. Sparks would walk back and say that the employees weren't working fast enough. He'd turn up the speed of the conveyor, and then they looked like Lucy and Ethel in the candy shop trying to collect the pecan meat as quickly as possible. She would also say that occasionally he would check underneath the building to make sure that no pecan meat had been wasted. These machines are the hoppers. They acted as the quality control center of Superior Pecans. Mr. Sparks wanted to assure that his products were truly superior. After pecans had been shelled, they were brought to the hoppers. They were poured into the funnel at the top, and then they fell into a conveyor which rolled toward the worker. The worker's job was to visually inspect each piece of pecan and make sure that they were truly superior. If it was a good half, the pecan continued down the conveyor and went down the bottom through a chute and fell into a can. This was taken to further parts of the processing. However, if the pecan had been broken during any other part of the process, or if there was a blemish on the pecan, they were collected and put in the drums on either side of the hopper. These blemished pecans had the blemishes cut away. The blemishes were actually sold to a man who fed them to his hogs, and the pieces were taken to the chopping machine. This is the chopping machine. Pecans that had been broken during any part of the process or had had a blemish cut away were brought to this machine. They were poured into the funnel at the top, and then they slid down this chute. Inside of this part, there was actually a grinding mechanism that worked like so. This ground the pecans into smaller pieces, and then they fell through the bottom into a barrel. These pecans were then moved to the shaker. Ready? After the pecans had been chopped into smaller pieces by the chopper, those pieces were taken to the shaker. The shaker sorted these pecans according to their size. In the bottom of the shaker was a grate. The grate has small holes. If the pecans were large enough to continue down the grate through the front chute, these were sold as pecan pieces. However, if the pecans fell through the holes in the grate, they slid down the side chute into a different bucket. These pecans were sold as pecan meal. Mr. Sparks had a business contract with Morrison's Cafe, and he sold a portion of his pecan pieces as dessert toppings. Ready? It was extremely loud in this room. The shaker alone filled the room with noise. A portion of the pecan halves were taken directly from the hoppers to the roasting room for roasting. Pecans were poured into the roasting room on the kitchen side through the hopper. The hopper led to these metal trays. The metal tray shook, and this sifted the pecans down through the process. The roasting itself was actually done by the heat lamps. Now, by the time the pecans got to the open spot, this is where they would be almost finished, and the workers would add salts and oils for flavor. However, as the building settled into the ground, the belt of the roasting room got off pitch. This caused the pecans to enter this zone too quickly. So, with their innovation in mind, the workers here created a set of gates. These gates kept the pecans from going to the process too quickly by separating the pecans into batches. After the pecans had had their flavor added, they finished the roasting under the last set of heat lamps. On the other side of this wall, they fell into a barrel lined with wax paper to cool and awaited packaging. Before the pecans could be packaged, they had to be weighed on scales like this one. After they were weighed, pecans were poured into plastic bags here. These plastic bags were taken to the sealing machine. The sealer's job was to seal the pecan bags together tightly by melting the tops of the bags together. Two heated rollers melted the tops of the bags together. These heated rollers led to the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt then took the pecans down to a motorized turning table. The person's job who sat there was to make sure that each bag was sealed well and to pack and to label these bags for shipping or retail. Along the walls of this room are puzzles. These puzzles were put together by employees of Superior Pecans who are affectionately called the nut ladies. These ladies usually were the ones that worked on the hand stacks. Every year, these ladies would add another puzzle to a wall by working on these puzzles during their 15-minute breaks twice a day. We call this room the Happy Kitchen. It was installed by a former owner to bring the building up to code. Any candy making, hand stacking, or packaging was done here. This is the new sealer. Bags are fed into the middle part right here, and these plates heat up. After the bags are put in, the foot feed closes the bag inside the clamp. This seals the bag together. This is a hand stack. It was a unique packaging idea that Mr. Sparks came up with himself. When Mr. Sparks owned the business, there were originally 5 different sizes of hand stacked pecans. 1 pound, 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, 3 pounds, and 5 pounds. Today, we still make 2 and 3 pound hand stacked pecans. The nut ladies put these hand stacks together by first creating an outside layer of pecans. Then they fill it in the inside. Then they do the next level and the next until they've completely filled the hand stack. They refer to the outside pecans as the fence and the inside pecans as the hogs. You build the fence and then put the hogs in the pen.